Chapter 1 From the Fire. G'day everyone, Rune here, and this is the start of a new What If on this channel inspired by these movies and this Pokemon fan comic. What if Ash, like a Pokemon version of San from Princess Mononoke, was raised by Pokemon? Before we start, I want to quickly thank Plus Ultraman for his advice on how to improve the original concept I had for this story. Now let's begin. We start the story when Ash is barely a 1-year-old baby. Delia has just recently moved back to Pallet to raise her son, after being away for several years for business opportunities. Then other life things, she decided to move back to Pallet after the unfortunate passing of her husband. One night, while tucking her son into bed, she can't help the melancholy smile that comes to her face. Ash looks so much like his father it makes her want to cry. He has the same jet black hair, the same slightly tanned skin, the brown eyes he got from her side of the family. Kissing him softly on the forehead, she wishes him sweet dreams before making her way down the stairs to continue unpacking. It has been a few months since the events that had taken her husband, the man that had turned her life around and been her knight in shining armor. Not a day goes by that she doesn't miss him. But she can't allow herself to wallow in her grief. She has her son to think about now. She needs to raise him with all the love in the world, and she needs to keep him safe. When she and Ash's father had first met, she hadn't been in the best of places, or with the best of people. It wasn't easy getting away from that, and she's pretty sure that there are still some that are looking for her. But surely they'll be safe here. There's nowhere else that she can think of that would be safer than her childhood home. Ash will be able to have a good life here. Her old mentor, Professor Oak, has a grandson about Ash's age now, and she's certain they'll become fast friends. She's startled out of her musings by a series of loud, frantic knocks at her door. With it being so late, she can't help but worry as to who it might be at the door. Calling out, she asks who it is, only to be met with more loud knocking. It's a minor miracle that the noise hasn't woken Ash yet. As she begins to make her way to the door, the knocking quickly turns into banging, as though whoever it is trying to break down the door. That thought makes her back away, as she wonders if she should stay or run to Ash's room. The choice is swiftly taken out of her hands, however, when the front door of her home is broken off its hinges and sent to the carpet in pieces. There, standing in the doorway, are several men and women, each wearing a uniform of either black or white with a red R emblazoned on the shirt. At the head of this group is a woman with shoulder-length purple hair and glasses whom Delia recognizes all too well. Not taking her eyes off the intruders, Delia slowly reaches into her pocket for the Pokeball containing her Espeon, Sunny. She had been planning on releasing her but hadn't found the opportunity yet. Something Delia is very grateful for now. She greets Matori coldly, asking why she's here and if it was really necessary to destroy her front door. Matori regards Delia with the same coldness, asking if she really thought she could just walk away from Team Rocket that easily. Delia was one of their best, and Giovanni was not very happy when he heard that she had left. Delia snaps that she doesn't care what Giovanni wants. She is not going back to that life. Not now, not ever. With that declaration made, she presses the button on the Pokeball, calling out Sunny. Acting fast, Delia calls for Sunny to throw the intruders out with Psychic. Focusing, she is able to throw out 3/4 of the Team Rocket members. However, the other quarter are able to evade the attack and send out their own Pokemon. Among them is Matori, who sends out a Houndoom. Together, the Team Rocket members all direct attacks at Delia and Sunny, the latter of whom attempts to protect them with Light Screen. However, while Sunny and Delia remain relatively unscathed, the house is not so fortunate. The attack starts a fire which, thanks to the scattered boxes, both packed and unpacked, is spreading rapidly. Delia, seeing the blaze, immediately thinks of Ash and tries to run for the stairs. But her moment of panic had given Matori just the opening she needed as she slips into Delia's blind spot and knocks her out with a swift kick to the head. Sunny, seeing her trainer and friend in trouble, attempts to help, only to be pinned down by a massive Pokemon now bearing down on her. With their quarries now captured, Team Rocket makes their way out of the building, leaving the fire to rage. With the roar of the fire and the distance between the bottom floor and the top, no one hears the cries of a baby, still lying in his crib as flames begin to surround him. A little ways away, in a forest not far from Pallet, Mew is flying above the trees looking for a late-night snack. Just as they're about to move to another part of the forest, their attention is drawn to something quite unusual. Mew, like all other legendaries, is able to sense aura, and this aura that they are now sensing is quite unique. It's incredibly strong, yet it doesn't feel very old. But the thing that really gets their attention is that it seems to be crying out for help. Curious and worried in equal parts, Mew teleports directly to the location of the unusual aura, only to be almost flattened by a piece of falling debris. Looking around, Mew is shocked to find themselves in a house engulfed in flames. Before they can think to teleport away, the most terrifying sound that they could have possibly heard reaches their ears. Looking down, Mew comes face to face with a human infant, crying and wailing while everything burns around them. Eyes wide with panic, Mew quickly floats down to the baby while the building creaks and rumbles with the strain of keeping itself standing. Wrapping their arms around him, Mew teleports them away just as the building begins to collapse around them. Deep in the forest outside of Pallet Town, in a place humans rarely go, Mew gently comforts and shushes the still frightened baby as he tries to free his lungs of smoke. Holding him close, Mew begins to hum a soft tune. After a few minutes, it works and the baby boy slowly falls asleep. Lying him down on a bed of leaves, Mew uses their powers as a psychic Pokemon to look into the baby's memories, hoping to find some answers as to what in the world just happened. The first thing they see is a woman with auburn hair and brown eyes. She has a warm, loving smile as she stares into the eyes of the baby in her arms, a single name on her lips. Ash. Ash. So that's the baby's name. Mew continues to search, looking for the memory that could explain what Mew had teleported into. Finally, they find a memory of the room that they'd found Ash in. It's late and the lights are out, so Ash's mother had probably set him down for a nap. But the sound of a loud crash had woken him. He was crying, but the cries were lost in the noise that was emanating from downstairs. Mew has lived a long enough life to recognize the sound of battle when they hear it. The smell of smoke begins to tinge the air, swiftly followed by a scream of pain. Then, there's a clamor as those that had been fighting outside of the nursery quickly escape the building. Pulling back, Mew looks down at the baby sadly. They'd been attacked. But by who? They'd recognized the voice of the one who'd screamed. Ash's mother. Had the attackers simply knocked her out? Or had they... Mew couldn't even finish that thought. Either way, Mew hadn't been able to save her. The house had been collapsing as they teleported away, and if the fire had started downstairs... Mew runs their fingers through Ash's hair as tears fill their eyes. Who would take care of him now? Their eyes widen as Ash rolls over to curl himself into Mew's warmth. At that moment, Mew decides. They will. They will raise Ash as their own. They're the one that saved him from the fire. Therefore, he is their responsibility. Closing their eyes, they teleport away from the forest, taking Ash to his new home. A year has passed since the night that had changed the lives of Mew and Ash forever. Raising a human baby is certainly not the easiest thing in the world, especially with how different people in Pokemon are. But Mew loves every second of it. They feel bad about needing to steal cloth and other sewing materials to make Ash's clothes and blankets. But the boy is still a baby, and as warm as the Tree of Beginning naturally is, it can still get cold at night, never mind when they're out and about or when they're visiting other regions. Now at 2 years old, Ash is a lot more active and regularly wants to follow his Mappa everywhere they go. He had even started trying to jump to see if he could float like Mew does. After these attempts had led Ash to trying to jump from a high rock, Mew had decided it would be best to try and teach him how to levitate. With his unusually high aura, it's certainly possible. And so here Mew is, encouraging their 2-year-old to come to them while he floats 2 inches off the ground. That's it, Ash. You're almost there. Come to Mappa! Floating the last few inches, Ash falls into Mew's arms as they cheer happily. Their little baby is growing up so fast. Another year passes and Mew is beginning to worry. Human babies would normally start talking by now, but Mew usually communicates with Ash via telepathy. It had seemed like the best and easiest way for him to understand them, but perhaps that had been a mistake. What if Ash never learned how to communicate with others? How would he make friends? How would he be able to tell Mew when something was wrong? Mappa! Forgetting everything that had just been on their mind, Mew teleports to Ash's side, wrapping their arms around him and shushing him softly. It wasn't an unusual occurrence. After the events that had led to Mew finding him and taking him in, it is no surprise that the boy would have reoccurring nightmares of it. Pulling their toddler close, they begin to hum the song that has become Ash's comfort blanket. Slowly, he begins to calm down and snuggles closer to Mew. Mappa. Mew freezes. Had Ash? Ash looks Mew in the eyes and repeats the word. His lips don't move, but they can hear him loud and clear, his sweet little voice echoing in their head. Tears filling their eyes, they pull Ash just a little bit closer. Yeah, I'm here, sweetie. Mappa's here. Smiling, they take on the form of an androgynous human so they can better wrap their baby in their arms. Their long pink hair tickles the toddler's face, causing him to giggle, before he yawns and goes back to sleep. Ash is now 4 and has taken to climbing anything and everything. Trees, rocks, crystal vines, you name it. Mew isn't entirely sure why Ash has become so taken with the activity when he can just levitate everywhere, but he enjoys it and it gives him exercise, so Mew lets him be. At the moment, Mew is checking on the Pokemon in the lower levels of the tree, making sure that there are no issues developing amongst the residents. While Mew checks in with a colony of Omanyte and Omastar, Ash runs off to climb one of the trees next to the lake. Be careful now, wild child. I will, Mappa! Mew smiles lovingly at their child for a few minutes before turning back to the colony. After a few minutes, it becomes clear that the only issues they have are minor and all involve the depth of the lake, as usual. It is already deep enough for Dialga to be completely submerged in it. How much deeper could they possibly want? Holding back a tired sigh, Mew thanks the colony for their thoughts before turning away, preparing to look for Ash. Before they can properly leave the colony's company, however, they hear something that makes their blood run cold. The loud crack and snap of splintering wood and the terrified scream of a little boy. Mew turns in the direction of the scream just in time to see Ash fall into the lake. Seeing this, Mew shoots toward the water as fast as they can, the one thought repeating in their head: Ash can't swim. As soon as they reach the water, they dive in, using their aura sense to search for their child. They spot him a little below them, struggling to get back to the surface. Focusing on their child, they wrap their energy around him before pulling him up towards them. As soon as he's close enough, they wrap their arms around him and pull him out of the water. As soon as Ash's head is in open air, he gasps and splutters for breath, clinging to his Mappa as he tries to get back the oxygen he'd lost. Mew holds him tightly as they carry him over to the shore. There, they lower them down to the solid earth where they can calm down and recover from what had just happened. That settled it. Mew doesn't care how much the Omanyte and Omastar complain, they are never making that lake any deeper. Also, I really need to teach you how to swim. Ash is now 6 and is floating around hunting for berries with his Mappa. He hopes they'll be able to find some grappa berries, he really likes those ones. They usually don't come to this forest, due to it being all the way over in the Kanto region, not to mention that it's very close to the Kangaskhan mating season. The soon-to-be mothers need the berries more. But the Tree of Beginnings orchard had had a bad harvest this year, and the herd had assured them that there is plenty for Ash and his Mappa to take. He's searching around the area that hugs the wall of a cliff, as grappa berries seem to favour that terrain when he hears something above him. Looking up, he sees a tiny yellow form falling from the top of the cliff. Acting on pure instinct, Ash shoots up toward the form, the wind rushing through his ears and the cloak that his mother had given him for warmth flying out behind him. Reaching the form quickly, he wraps his arms around it, pulling it close and stopping its descent. Looking down at the yellow ball in his arms, Ash is able to see that it's a Pichu. "Are you okay?" The Pichu uncurls and looks at Ash. Now Ash is able to see that the Pichu has a cut on their forehead. The moment Pichu sees him, however, he begins struggling to try and get out of his arms, only stopping when Ash reminds him that they're still in midair. With Pichu now still, Ash looks around, trying to lock onto his Mappa's familiar aura. After a few minutes, he spots it near a lake and begins to make his way there. While he does, the Pichu smacks his chest, demanding to know where they're going. Ash explains that he's taking Pichu to his Mappa so that they can get his cut healed. At the instant response, Pichu looks up at the boy. "Did you just understand me?" "Yeah, you were kinda shouting at me." "But you're—" "Oh, that's right. My name's Ash. What's yours?" Inazu." Over with Mew, they are just piling all of the berries that they'd managed to gather into a pile. Looking it over, they nod to themselves. This would do well, and they didn't want to risk taking any more berries. Looking around, they sigh as they don't spot Ash. He had probably gone looking for grappa berries again and hadn't gathered any other berries. Honestly, they've lost count of how many times they've told him that grappa berries don't grow this time of year. They're about to go looking for him when they hear his voice in their head. "Mappa, we have a boo-boo! And this time it's not me!" Turning in the direction of their son's aura, the first thing that Mew sees is Ash barreling toward them at top speed. Far too fast for the boy to be able to stop when he needs to. Sighing, Mew uses their own psychic power to slow Ash before he face-plants the dirt. With the 6-year-old now floating in front of them, they can see that he's carrying a small Pichu with a cut on its forehead. Looking from Pichu to Ash, they ask what happened and Ash explains that he saw Pichu fall from a cliff and caught him. Smiling, Mew pats Ash on the head affectionately, calling him a little hero, which Ash says he likes better than Mew's usual nickname of Wild Child. Chuckling, Mew turns back to the Pichu and looks over the cut. Thankfully, it's nothing too serious, and a quick heal pulse fixes it instantly. With the Pichu's injury healed, Mew asks where his parents are, offering to take him back to them. To their surprise and sorrow, he says that he doesn't have any, and he's always been alone. Looking at Ash, Mew can already tell from the pleading look in his eyes what he's thinking. Smiling, Mew asks if the Pichu would like to stay with them. Surprised, the Pichu agrees, introducing himself as Inazu. The moment they arrive home, Ash immediately begins to go into more detail about he and Inazu had met, excitedly recounting how fast he'd had to go in order to catch the Pichu. When he mentions them telling each other their names, Mew turns to them with an eyebrow raised in surprise. They ask if they'd introduced themselves with their names, and Ash confirms. Hearing this, Mew can't help but burst out laughing at the two boys, causing them to look at each other in complete confusion. Between giggles, Mew explains to the boys that names are something that are only meant to be known by family members. That's why Mew always uses Ash's nickname while they're in public, and everyone else does too. To tell someone your name is to acknowledge them as family. Hearing this, the two boys blush in embarrassment. After a few more minutes, Mew finally manages to calm themselves down, admitting that this is partly their fault. They should have explicitly explained the proper greeting and introduction etiquette, rather than assuming that Ash would have picked it up on his own. The next few hours are spent with Mew teaching the boys the proper etiquette for introducing themselves, asking what they should call someone else, and so on. A few months later, Mew decides to take their family on a little outing to the forest where Mew had first sensed Ash. Taking them to a part of the forest where the trees thin out into a meadow with a stream, Mew tells them to stay close, only to give a fond sigh as the overexcited Ash and Inazu go racing off to explore. The day those two slowed down will be when the end of the world is nigh. Over with Ash, he had never seen a place that is so green without any trees. The Tree of Beginning is always full of trees, and the area around it is all rock and dirt plains. Here, he can see flowers he's never seen before. The river looks so calm and cool, and he can see a strange structure of what looks like stones in the distance. It's all so beautiful and incredible. So absorbed in his exploration, he doesn't notice that he's heading right for a Nidoking until he runs right into him. Stumbling back, Ash falls on his butt before looking up and apologizing to the Nidoking. However, the Nidoking doesn't look very interested in an apology, glaring down at the little boy and Pichu. The hulking Pokemon growls angrily and states that Ash's kind don't belong here. Before Ash can question what he means, the Nidoking takes a swipe at him with his massive claws. Grabbing Inazu, Ash quickly scurries out of the way of the attack, one of Nidoking's claws managing to scratch his cheek. Terrified, Ash screams for his Mappa, the call so loud and so frantic that anyone within a short distance of him would be able to hear it echoing in their heads. Just as the Nidoking is about to take another swipe, Mew teleports right in front of their children with an active Protect. When the shield dissipates, Mew glares at the Nidoking while their eyes glow blue with power and fury. How dare this lumbering oaf attack their children! Furious, Mew begins to battle the Nidoking. So focused on the Nidoking and the fight, none of the forest dwellers notice a small black-haired boy and a plum-haired girl watching everything unfold. With a final, anger-enhanced Fire Blast, Nidoking is knocked out and Mew zooms over to Ash and Inazu, frantically asking if they're okay. Spotting the cut on Ash's cheek, they quickly heal it, leaving behind only a faint scar. The shock now wearing off, Ash sniffs before bursting into tears over what had just happened, Inazu not far behind. Cradling their children, Mew gently shushes them, assuring them that they're safe. It's at that point that the little boy and girl make their presence known, the boy letting out a loud shout of how amazing that battle had been, before asking Ash if Mew is his Pokemon and what type of Pokemon it is. Confused and still a little frightened, Ash huddles closer to Mew, indicating that he wants to get away from them. Getting the message, Mew transforms into an Arcanine, lifting Ash and Inazu onto their back before taking off at a run. The little boy tries to run after them, telling them to wait while the girl trails behind him. However, with Mew actively attempting to outrun them, there's no way the children can keep up. A little later, once Ash and Inazu have calmed down from the day's events, Ash asks Mew what those two creatures were. Mew's heart sinks. They'd been dreading the day that they'd have to tell Ash about humans. The day that he would, no doubt, realize the truth. Mew explains that those two were human children, and that while some humans live alongside Pokemon and treat them as friends and family, they are not Pokemon. Ash nods, eyes wide before turning to Inazu. So that's why you were so surprised I could understand you. What? Ash rolls his eyes before telling Mew that it didn't take a genius to figure out. He's always known that he doesn't look like a Mew, or any other Pokemon that he's ever seen. He's also seen Mew transform into a human once before. It wasn't hard to figure out that he'd tried to transform as a baby and gotten himself stuck. He just didn't know what he'd got himself stuck as. He appreciates his Mappa not drawing attention to it to spare his feelings, but he can put two and two together. Mew's eyes are wide before they give a melancholy smile, saying that they can't get anything past him. Ash puffs his chest out proudly. Nope! A few days later, Mew decides to take the family to the lower levels for a more relaxed family outing. There, they have a little picnic before Ash and Inazu are allowed to run around. Mew watches on with a smile as Ash cannonballs into the lake. Despite his first experience with the large body of water, he has come to love swimming, especially on particularly hot days like today. They're about to start cleaning up their picnic when they notice that Inazu hasn't joined Ash in the water. Admittedly a little worried, Mew floats over to their youngest and asks what's wrong. Inazu doesn't say anything, simply stares at the water with his ears drooping. Frowning, Mew looks at the lake, then back at Inazu. Do you not know how to swim? There's a pause before Inazu gives a small nod. Mew smiles warmly as they move in front of Inazu, lowering themselves until they're half submerged in the lake. It's alright, Tumble. I'll teach you. They hold out their paws to Inazu in a silent offer for him to hold them. Once he has a solid hold on Mew's paws, they lead him slowly into the water. Seeing him stiffen as his back paw touches the water, they assure him that the water at this end isn't very deep. Keeping their grip on his paws, they help keep his head above the water while directing him on how to kick his back paws. Mew never thought that they'd need to teach this twice, but they won't complain. Teaching their children things like this is one of their favourite things about being a parent. And that, everyone, is where I'm going to leave the story for now. Join me next time as we see this family expand once again and see how they celebrate birthdays. I'm Rune. See you next chapter.